My name's Trey Hill. I own and run Harborview Farms. It's a multi-generational farm located on the northeast corner of Maryland. Where we farm is the Delmarva Peninsula. It's a sandwich between the Atlantic Ocean and the Chesapeake Bay. And we grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and barley. So when we started the cover crops 25 years ago, I didn't really believe in them. I had an agronomy degree, thought I knew everything about farming. But as we started to really use a lot of cover crops and we started to do later kill dates and we started to experiment with planting green and things, we could see differences in the soil. We could see differences in the water that was running off our fields. We learned a lot of, really hard lessons, expensive lessons at times. We started with just straight cereals, which we learned that just doesn't work with corn. So we started adding clover to it to have that offset on the nitrogen cycle. We've started killing off some of the cereals a little earlier in the year at times. And now we've gone to more of like a 5 to 7 way mix that we're planting. We find that we get a lot better balance that way. Since we've been going to this more expanded mix, we planted 100% of everything has been planted into green fields. So by green fields, the cover crop's still living when we plant them. So all of our corn and all of our soybeans are planted green and have been for, I guess, pushing 10 years now. So this is our cover crop shed now. It used to be our seed shed. Now, this time of year, it's all cover crop. So here we have our mix, 7-way mix, and then because of our cover crop program, we have to switch to a straight cereal. And then back there is barley. We've switched some of our cereal rye out for barley. I think it's easier to plant through and has less effect on the corn, but we only plant that early. Then you got some winter pea. Those are your legumes, the real small stuff. So yeah, a little bit of everything. I mean, all of ours has been based on observation. What I tried was to plant a single species cereal as a cover crop and then to plant it green. And we kept just getting huge yield drags. It became apparent that that wasn't going to work. We've learned things now about, if the cover crop's still green when the corn emerges, is it shaded? More importantly, I think it's nitrogen. So just some basic agronomy mixed with more of the regenerative state of mind. And now we feel pretty confident we can grow high yielding corn competitively with other practices and not have issues planting green. We're still not fully utilizing the amount of nitrogen that we're getting from our legumes. When we went from a single species mix, we went straight to a 3-way. So we started to add mustards in. So we started to add rapeseed in because I like what it does to the soil, and also I think it's pretty in the spring. You get the nice yellow flowers. So we started doing a crimson rapeseed cereal mix, and that worked great. Then we started to make it very complicated. So we started doing all these different mixes and trying to come up with prescriptions based on planting dates and when we were going to plant in the spring. And I think what I did was I added too much complexity. We learned a lesson like with purple top turnips, we can't plant those. We had a mess. So we had tried them on some limited acres as part of a mix. We learned that we can't plant through them, so we eliminated that. But for the most part, we're just doing one mix now just to kind of keep it a little bit more simplified, get a little more buying power. And it's still uncomfortable at times when we're planting into real tall cover crops. And every farm is different. And I think one of the big problems we have is everyone thinks it can't be done where they are. I've been doing this for 10 or 15 years and still have neighbors that swear they can't do it on their farms when I'm farming on sometimes both sides. So I think that there's always a way to do it. It's just a matter of figuring out what works within that region. For us, this works, but it's been a lot of work to get to this point, and a lot of time and a lot of just observations and really monitoring our fields, walking our fields, shoveling in our fields. We're not really sending out a lot of tests, and I haven't really figured out how to baseline things, but just a lot of it just observing what's going on and seeing it. Well, here's that's a cabbage moth. The theory on the cabbage moths is we get them in here, and then we get insects that like to eat their larvae and their worms. So we're giving bait to the predatory insects, and we're giving them a food source so they're not getting starved out. If you dig down out here now, I mean, there's just bugs everywhere. Which 20 years ago would have scared me to death, right? I would have been like, we better spray even though it's fall. And learning things like that and being able to accept moths in your field just takes that time and patience to really explore it and want to explore it. I think is the other thing, is you have to have a desire to farm this way. And that's when the diversity really started to flourish. That's when the birds really show up, and you've got, things tall enough for birds to perch on, and you've got bugs, and it just creates an entirely different environment once you start letting that stuff grow. The earthworm houses are the coolest. If you feel lumps as you're walking across the field, that's all earthworm houses. Oh, here's one. See, if you look at that and you feel that hump, that's an earthworm house. So the earthworms are living there, and they've taken all this stuff and covered it up so they don't get flooded. And then if you pull it off, there's the hole about the size of your pinky. That is where they live, and they can live in the same house for years Here's some peas, Austrian winter pea. We've got radish, we've got flax, we've got another radish, we've got rapeseed over here. Each root is gonna contribute something different to the soil. That's all earthworm droppings. So this is our plow. So that's our tillage, what, 18 inches deep? And then here's the pea and vetch growing together. Starting to get some nodules. You're starting to see where they're starting to fix nitrogen. It's taking the nitrates out. And then you can just see all the different roots. So this is all your rapeseed, that's this plant, but you can see all the little fibrous roots that are also in there that are kind of helping to balance that soil out and give you that. Keith Burns would say, he describes it as chocolate cake. And really I found that to be kind of the best analogy I ever heard. And that's pretty much what we have. If you went into a conventionally tilled field where we used to till all the time, you wouldn't see near that number of worms and root structure everywhere that we have here. One really neat experiment we did that was a big epiphany for me was we had Ray Weil out here from the University of Maryland, and he wanted to do a research plot. So it was 4 strips with cover crop. One was a mix, one was a cereal, one was radishes, just different, like what you would normally have, and then one was a bare strip. And the cover crop didn't get a whole lot of growth. It was probably less than what we see here. And they pipetted the water out of what was going into our groundwater next to our house and measured the nitrates. And the nitrates were much higher where we didn't have cover crops. Even the small cover crops had a lower nitrate level, and where we had cover crops, we were under 10 parts per million across the board, which that by standards, that's well within any parameters of safe drinking water. To me was fairly telling because it showed me that this was actually working. My wife comes from a farm background as well, so her family are dairy farmers. And when our kids were born, we never really discussed it, but we both kind of came to the same conclusion that our kids probably wouldn't farm. And then when we got into the environmental side of stuff and really started talking about the impacts that we have on the world and the privilege that we have that we can impact the world in a better way, and that a lot of the folks that are helping me get better are actually jealous because I actually have the impact, right? They're my support staff. The environmental community, the NGOs are all supporting what I'm doing, but in a lot of ways, I think they would rather be doing what I'm doing, right? Having that impact. And I think my daughter was able to see that, and she's kind of turned that into now wanting to farm with me. So she's at ag school now, or studying agriculture in college now, with the hopes of coming back and farming with me. But I think if we didn't have that environmental side, if we didn't have that creative piece, that impact on the world piece, I don't know that she would have had that desire to come back because it didn't have the purpose and impact that it does today.